There is a place in the soul where pain becomes louder than reason, where desire drowns out truth, and where the wound becomes God. That place is addiction, not the kind you see in textbooks, not the simplified caricature of weakness. No, Jung saw addiction as something far deeper, a spiritual thirst gone unanswered, a desperate cry of the unconscious to be whole again. We live in a world that numbs itself constantly. Scrolling, shopping, smoking, drinking, obsessing, escaping. But what are we really running from? Carl Jung once said, remains. No tree can grow to heaven unless its roots reach down to hell. And in addiction, we meet hell, K's. But we also meet the possibility of heaven if we have the courage to go deeper. Because the real enemy is not the substance, not the screen, press remains, not the bottle or the behavior. The real enemy is the silence inside, the hollowness, the ghost of your unlived life screaming through every craving. Jung understood what most psychiatrists missed. Addiction is not just a disease. It is a misdirected search for meaning, a misguided attempt at reunion with the lost parts of the self. He treated alcoholics as broken men but as souls in exile, souls disconnected from the inner divine, from the archetype of wholeness. Presence remains. That's why he told one desperate alcoholic patient, you are not truly seeking alcohol. You are seeking God. And that's the truth they never teach you in rehab, in self-help books, in cold recovery programs. They try to treat the symptom. Presence remains. Jung wanted to meet the soul. He believed addiction was the cry of the psyche for transformation, the death of the false self, the shadow screaming to be integrated, the neglected child within begging to be seen. You don't cure addiction by managing it, remains. You don't tame it with tricks, mantras or hacks. You overcome it by facing what it's trying to tell you. You sit in the fire it brings, and you ask, have I refused to feel? What truth have I buried under this craving? Because here's the brutal truth. Addiction is never random. It is a pattern, a message, a teacher disguised as torment. Presence remains. You keep reaching for the same thing because your soul is trying to finish an unfinished sentence. And until you write it, until you feel it, presence remains. Until you grieve the part of yourself you lost along the way, you will stay hungry for things that can never feed you. This is not about willpower. This is about soul power. It's about walking back in the cave where the addiction first began. The moment you disconnected from yourself, press remains. The moment the shame entered, the trauma took root, the mask went on. That moment you learned, I'm not enough as I am. That's where it begins, in the bottle, but in the belief. Not in the needle, but in the neglect. Not in the craving, but in the core wound. So ask yourself, what am I actually craving? Most will say relief. Some will say control. But dig deeper, and you'll find something sacred: connection, presence, meaning. A reason to wake up that isn't built on survival. And that is the path Jung walked his patients toward. Not suppression, but transformation. Sobriety for the sake of it, but individuation. The process of becoming who you truly are beneath the mask. Because addiction is not the enemy, it is the alarm clock, the fire alarm of a burning soul. And until you wake up, you will relive the same cycle. Clean, relapse, shame, repeat. Presence remains. But because you are weak, but because you're using the wrong tools to fight the wrong war. This is a war of the spirit. It requires a spiritual solution, not religion, not doctrine, not guilt and not dogma, but awakening. Awakening to the truth that your life is not meaningless, that your pain is not random, lekamanes, that the thing you are running from is the very thing that will set you free. Jung believed that every person has a shadow, a hidden part of themselves they cannot face. And addiction is often how the shadow manifests. The darker it becomes, the louder it whispers. But here's the gift. When you face the shadow, you no longer need the substance, because the addiction was just a substitute for integration, a poor man's enlightenment, a synthetic version of connection, purpose, peace. Once you learn to grieve your unlived life, the compulsion fades. Once you reclaim the child you abandoned, the hunger softens, presence remains. Once you walk through the fire of your pain without trying to escape it, you don't need the escape anymore. The substance, the screen, brains, the cycle, they become irrelevant. Not because you forced yourself to quit, but because you no longer need to. You have outgrown the lie. Presence remains. You have remembered who you are. And that is the difference between recovery and transformation. Recovery is stopping the behavior. Transformation is ending the need for it. That's the Jungian path, not surface change. Soul change. It's not easy. It's not fast. But it is real. Demands courage, honesty, solitude, and often suffering. But what lies on the other side is not just freedom, it's rebirth. Because addiction doesn't make you weak. It makes you a candidate for awakening. And some of the strongest souls this world has ever known were once drowning in their own compulsions until they chose to walk the path of fire and become who they were born to be. The journey to yourself is not linear. It's a spiral down into the core, into the underworld of your being. The Greeks called it katabasis, the descent, and every soul who ever became anything had to go there, not to find pleasure, but to find pain. And from that pain, purpose, because your emptiness is not a curse. It's a compass. It's pointing to where you lost your way, where you split from your soul in the name of being accepted, approved, attractive. Somewhere along the way, you stopped asking what was real. You started asking what would be liked. And you lost yourself in the process. Jung said the privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. But how can you become that when every waking hour is spent trying to impress, to seduce, to perform? How can you become when your energy is drained by seeking reflections instead of building roots? You cannot rise if you're always reaching outward. You rise when you sink inward, into the wound, into the place where the ache began, into that first moment where you thought, if they want me, then maybe I matter. That is where the fire of false desire was lit, and it's your job now, your holy responsibility, to extinguish it with truth, not by shame, but by sight. See what you've become, not to punish, to awaken. Because this world doesn't need more seduction. It needs more self-possession. It needs men who know who they are when no one is watching. It needs women who stand so rooted in their essence that no amount of rejection can collapse them. This world needs fire, not friction. It needs visionaries, creators, builders, leaders, souls who have faced their own abyss and come back bearing gifts, souls who know that lust is not the goal. It's the distraction. It's the bright light that keeps you from seeing the deeper hunger inside. Hunger is not for a body. It's for your calling. It's for your genius, your alignment, your unshakable sense of direction. You cannot get there if you're still trading your life force for brief touches and broken connections. You can't get there if you're still afraid to be alone. Because solitude is not a prison. It is your birthplace. All great things begin in silence. All transformation is forged in solitude. This is where the noise dies and the signal becomes clear. This is where your mind quiets and the soul speaks. It says, I have more for you, but you must stop selling yourself for so little. You were not made to be another lost voice in the algorithm, another ghost scrolling for worth, another product of validation addiction. No, you were made to command yourself, to rule your inner kingdom, to bring order to the chaos of craving. Jung called this individuation, the process of becoming whole. And to become whole, you must claim every part of you, even the parts that want to be touched, especially the parts that feel starved, to feed them carelessly, but to listen to what they're really saying. The body says, I want pleasure, but the soul says, I want peace. The ego says, I want to be wanted, but the spirit says, I want to be remembered by myself. And the deeper you go, the clearer it becomes. Lust isn't love. It's grief wearing perfume. It's childhood longing in adult disguise. It's the echo of a moment you never got, trying to recreate itself through someone else's mouth, someone else's hands. You cannot heal what hurt you by reenacting it. You can only heal by seeing through it. This is the turning point, when you stop asking, "How do I get what I want?" and start asking, "What wants to be healed through me?" You become the container for your own becoming. You hold the hunger without feeding it garbage. You sit with the ache without numbing it with novelty. You endure the void and discover that it's not death, it's the womb of rebirth. This is what they don't tell you. The hunger you feel is sacred, shameful, sacred. It is raw potential energy, begging to be purified, channeled, harnessed. You can turn it into art, into business, into greatness, only if you stop leaking it into people who were never meant to carry it. You are a generator of power. Your lust, your longing, is not your enemy. It's your untamed genius. But it will burn your life down if you don't direct it. You don't overcome it by denial. You overcome it by devotion. Devotion to a vision higher than pleasure. Devotion to the version of you that exists beyond impulse. The sovereign self. The self that can enter a room and not need to be noticed. The self that doesn't beg to be chosen because it has already chosen itself. That is who you're becoming, and it begins not with another conquest, but with a choice. The choice to turn inward,